Our story begins in a quaint little town, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows. This picturesque setting, with its serene landscapes and tranquil ambiance, seemed like the perfect place for anyone seeking peace and solitude. The town, with its cobblestone streets and charming cottages, was a place where everyone knew each other, and secrets were hard to keep. Yet, amidst this close-knit community, there was one man who remained an enigma. Here lived a man named Arthur Lloyd, a man known for his quiet demeanor and solitary nature. Arthur was a figure of intrigue, a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was often seen walking alone through the town, his head bowed, lost in thought. The townsfolk would greet him with polite nods, but Arthur rarely engaged in conversation. His presence was a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic town. Arthur was an enigma, a recluse who kept to himself, rarely venturing out into the bustling town square. He preferred the solitude of his home, a place where he could escape from the prying eyes of the townsfolk. His reclusive nature only added to the air of mystery that surrounded him. People would often catch glimpses of him peeking through his curtains, as if he were watching the world from a distance, yet never truly a part of it. His past was a closed book, a tapestry woven with threads of speculation and hushed whispers. The townsfolk had their theories, of course. Some believed that Arthur had once been a scholar, a man of great intellect who had retreated from the world after a personal tragedy. Others whispered about darker secrets, tales of forbidden knowledge and ancient mysteries that had driven him into seclusion. Whatever the truth, Arthur's past remained a mystery, locked away in the recesses of his mind. Some townsfolk spoke of a lost love, a tragedy that had shattered his spirit, while others muttered about a dark secret that haunted his waking hours. There were stories of a woman, a love that had once brought light into Arthur's life, only to be snatched away by cruel fate. This loss, they said, had left him a broken man, haunted by memories of what could have been. Others, however, believed that Arthur's solitude was self-imposed, a penance for sins known only to him. Arthur lived in a creaky old house at the edge of town, a rambling Victorian mansion with a melancholic air. The house itself was a reflection of its owner, a place that had once been grand and full of life, now fallen into disrepair. Its once beautiful facade was now weathered and worn, the windows covered in a layer of dust that seemed to obscure the past. The mansion stood as a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets of its solitary inhabitant. Its overgrown garden and dusty windows served as a testament to his solitary existence. The garden, once a place of beauty and tranquility, was now a tangle of weeds and overgrown plants. The flowers that had once bloomed so brightly were now choked by neglect, their vibrant colors faded. The dusty windows, through which Arthur would occasionally peer, offered a glimpse into a world that had long since moved on without him. He spent his days lost in thought, his only companions the ticking grandfather clock in the hallway and the rustling leaves outside his window. The clock, with its steady, rhythmic ticking, was a constant reminder of the passage of time, a sound that echoed through the empty halls of the mansion. The rustling leaves, stirred by the gentle breeze, seemed to whisper secrets of their own, adding to the air of mystery that surrounded Arthur's life. His life was a mystery, one that would only deepen with time. The townsfolk could only speculate about the true nature of Arthur's existence, their imaginations running wild with possibilities. Each new piece of information, each new glimpse into his life only served to deepen the enigma. Arthur Lloyd was a man shrouded in mystery, a puzzle that seemed destined to remain unsolved. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the town, a chilling discovery was made. The air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the sky was painted in hues of orange and gold. It was a time of quiet reflection, a moment when the world seemed to hold its breath. But on this particular evening, the tranquility was shattered by a discovery that would send shockwaves through the town. The local doctor, a kindly old man named Dr. Thompson, received an urgent summons to Arthur Lloyd's residence. Dr. Thompson was a man of great compassion, known for his gentle manner and unwavering dedication to his patients. He had treated Arthur on several occasions, though the reclusive man rarely sought medical help. The urgency of the summons filled the doctor with a sense of foreboding, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. A worried neighbor, alerted by the eerie silence emanating from the house, had peered through a window and been met with a sight that sent shivers down her spine. The house, usually so quiet and still, seemed to exude an air of dread. The neighbor, a woman named Mrs. Henderson, had always been concerned about Arthur's well-being. On this evening, Her concern turned to fear as she glimpsed something through the window that she could scarcely believe. The sight that met her eyes was one of horror, a scene that would haunt her for the rest of her days. Dr. Thompson hurried to Arthur's home, his heart pounding in his chest. The urgency in the message he had received left no room for delay. He had known Arthur for years, a man of robust health and jovial spirit. The thought of something being seriously wrong with him was almost inconceivable, yet the tone of the messenger's voice had been unmistakable. Something was dreadfully amiss. A sense of foreboding settled in his stomach as he approached the house. The usually vibrant garden seemed dull, the flowers drooping as if they too sensed the gravity of the situation. He knocked on the door, which creaked open almost immediately, revealing Arthur's wife, her face a mask of worry and despair. She led him to the bedroom where Arthur lay. The sight that greeted him was one he would never forget. Arthur's face was pale, his eyes closed as if in a peaceful slumber, but there was no mistaking the lifelessness of his body. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. A quick examination confirmed his worst fears. Arthur Lloyd was dead. Dr. Thompson checked for a pulse, listened for a heartbeat, but there was nothing. He stood there for a moment, grappling with the reality of the situation. How could this have happened? Arthur had been the picture of health just days ago. The news of Arthur's demise spread through the town like wildfire. It was a small community, and word traveled fast. Within hours, everyone knew of the tragedy that had befallen the Lloyd family. People gathered in the streets, their conversations hushed, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock and disbelief. People gathered in hushed groups, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. Arthur had been a well-liked figure in the town, always ready with a smile and a kind word. The idea that he could be gone so suddenly was hard to comprehend. Whispers of, "How could this happen?" and "He was so healthy," filled the air. How could a man seemingly in good health just die in his sleep? It was a question that haunted everyone. The doctor, a practical man of science, attributed Arthur's death to natural causes, perhaps a heart attack in his sleep. It was the only explanation that made sense to him given the circumstances. The doctor, a practical man of science, attributed Arthur's death to natural causes, perhaps a heart attack in his sleep. He explained this to the family, trying to offer some comfort in the face of their grief. But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the story. But some townsfolk, their minds prone to superstition, whispered of more sinister forces at play. They spoke in hushed tones of curses and old grudges, of dark forces that could snatch a life away in the dead of night. Arthur's past, which had always been shrouded in a bit of mystery, now became the subject of intense speculation. They spoke of a curse that had befallen Arthur, a punishment for his mysterious past. Some recalled strange occurrences and whispered secrets that had always surrounded him. Was there more to Arthur's story than met the eye? The air was thick with rumors and fear, each tale more fantastical than the last. The air crackled with unease as the townsfolk prepared for Arthur's funeral. The preparations were somber, the usual chatter and laughter replaced by a heavy silence. People moved about with a sense of purpose, but also with a palpable tension. It was as if the very air was charged with the weight of unspoken fears and unanswered questions. The funeral was a somber affair, attended by a small group of townsfolk. They gathered around the grave, their faces drawn and solemn. The minister's words were lost to the wind, but the grief in the air was unmistakable. Arthur's wife stood at the front, her eyes red from crying, clutching a handkerchief as if it were a lifeline. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, a heavy silence fell over the gathering. It was as if the very earth itself was mourning the passing of this enigmatic soul. The sound of the dirt hitting the coffin was a stark reminder of the finality of death, and a shiver ran through the crowd. It was as if the very earth itself was mourning the passing of this enigmatic soul. The townsfolk lingered, reluctant to leave, as if hoping that by staying they could somehow make sense of the tragedy. But there were no answers to be found, only the cold, hard reality of loss. But the story of Arthur Lloyd, it seemed, was far from over. Whispers of his mysterious past and the circumstances of his death continued to circulate. The town, once a place of peace and familiarity, now felt like a place of secrets and shadows. And as the days turned into weeks, the legend of Arthur Lloyd grew, becoming a tale that would be told for generations to come. 3 days after Arthur's burial, a rumor began to circulate through the town. A rumor so incredible that it was initially dismissed as the ramblings of an overactive imagination. A farmer claimed to have seen Arthur walking along a secluded country lane, his clothes dusty and his demeanor disoriented. At first, people scoffed at the farmer's tale, attributing it to grief-induced hallucinations or wishful thinking. However, as the days passed, more and more people came forward claiming to have seen Arthur. Some described him as looking confused and disoriented, while others swore that he had a strange, almost ethereal glow about him. The rumors reached a fever pitch when the gravedigger, a man known for his unflappable nature, swore blind that he had seen Arthur's coffin lying empty in the newly dug grave. The townsfolk were in an uproar. How could this be? Had Arthur Lloyd somehow cheated death? Or was something far more sinister at play in this strange tale? Theories and speculations ran rampant through the town. The air was thick with tension and curiosity, as if the very atmosphere was charged with the electricity of the unknown. People gathered in small groups, their voices hushed but urgent, sharing their own versions of what might have happened. The town had never seen anything like it, and the mystery seemed to grow with each passing day. Some whispered of ancient curses and restless spirits, tales passed down through generations that spoke of the supernatural. These stories, once dismissed as mere folklore, now seemed to hold a kernel of truth. The old book of curses was consulted more than ever, its pages worn from constant handling. The haunted house at the edge of town, long abandoned, became a focal point of speculation, while others clung to more rational explanations, seeking solace in logic and science. They gathered around chalkboards, scribbling complex equations and theories, trying to make sense of the inexplicable. Newspapers were scoured for similar incidents, hoping to find a precedent that could explain the bizarre occurrence, suggesting that Arthur had never actually been dead in the first place. The medical community was particularly vocal, with doctors and scientists debating the possibility of a misdiagnosis. Could it have been a case of catalepsy, where the body mimics death so closely that even experienced physicians could be fooled? Perhaps he had fallen into a deep coma, they argued, a state so profound that it was mistaken for death. Medical journals were consulted, and case studies of comas were reviewed in an attempt to find a plausible explanation. Families of coma patients shared their own stories, adding to the growing pool of theories, and had somehow managed to revive himself and escape from his own grave. The idea seemed far-fetched, yet the evidence was hard to ignore. Eyewitnesses claimed to have seen a figure emerging from the cemetery late at night, and the disturbed earth around Arthur's grave seemed to support this incredible tale. The doctor, however, remained skeptical. He had examined Arthur's body himself and was certain that the man had been dead. The medical records were clear, and the signs of death unmistakable. Yet the growing number of eyewitness accounts and the undeniable physical evidence made him question his own conclusions. He had examined Arthur's body himself and was certain that the man had been dead. The autopsy had been thorough, and there was no doubt in his mind at the time. But now, with Arthur's body missing and the town in an uproar, he couldn't help but wonder if he had overlooked something. Yet, the sheer volume of eyewitness accounts, people who swore they had seen Arthur walking the streets, coupled with the undeniable fact that Arthur's coffin was now empty, gave him pause. The newspapers were filled with sensational headlines, and the town buzzed with excitement and fear. Coupled with the undeniable fact that Arthur's coffin was now empty, gave him pause. The grave had been undisturbed for years, and now it lay open, its contents missing. The sight of the empty coffin sent chills down the spines of those who saw it, adding to the growing sense of unease. Could he have been so wrong? The question haunted him, keeping him awake at night. He replayed the events over and over in his mind, searching for any clue that might explain the mystery. The more he thought about it, the more uncertain he became. The mystery of Arthur Lloyd's supposed resurrection became a tale whispered around fireplaces, a chilling anecdote that sent shivers down spines. Families gathered in their living rooms, the flickering firelight casting eerie shadows as they recounted the strange events. The story took on a life of its own, becoming a part of the town's folklore. A chilling anecdote that sent shivers down spines and kept children awake at night. The younger ones were particularly affected, their imaginations running wild with thoughts of ghosts and the undead. Parents did their best to reassure them, but the fear was palpable, and kept children awake at night. The story of Arthur Lloyd became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the thin line between life and death. It was a story that would be told and retold for generations, each time growing more elaborate and terrifying. And just when it seemed that the strange case of Arthur Lloyd couldn't get any stranger, fate intervened in the most unexpected of ways. A mysterious stranger arrived in town, bringing with him a new set of questions and possibilities. The clock of destiny ticked on, and the town braced itself for what was to come. Fate intervened in the most unexpected of ways. The arrival of the stranger was like a pebble thrown into a still pond, creating ripples that would affect everyone in the town. An old letter discovered by chance hinted at secrets long buried. The mystery was far from over, and the town of Whispers was about to uncover even more unsettling truths.